I have been reading this book, Walking Home by Simon Armitage, who, as a lot of people know, is our poet laureate. Um, he wrote it quite a while ago, and it's about walking the Pennine Way. And Simon Armitage decided to walk the Pennine Way north to south rather than south to north. There are a few reasons that he explains in his book, but I wanted to uh, focus on one particular reason because really what he's doing here is saying it's because I'm a poet. And I I downloaded this book to listen to it in the car. And when I heard this bit, I thought I have to buy the book as well. So now I have the book, but I'm listening to it as well. So um, that's me, as you might be able to see. I enjoy buying books. And here he explains about being a little bit contrary and wanting to walk the Pennine Way from north to south. Here we go. But as a poet, I'm naturally contrary. If most writers are writing prose, then mostly I'm writing something else. Poetry, by definition, is an alternative, and an obstinate one at that. It often refuses to reach the right-hand margin or even the bottom of the page. Prose fills a space like liquid poured in from the top, but poetry occupies it, arrays itself in formation, sets up camp and refuses to budge. It is a dissenting and willful art form, and most of its practitioners are signed up members of the awkward squad. Now, I want all of my students and everybody else who will listen to know that our officially foremost poet at the moment in the UK sees himself as a signed up member of the awkward squad. And for people to start to think that poetry is not just a clever thing that intellectual people might read for fun, and that you have to learn about at school, and that there are certain ways that you have to learn about poems, and that it's traditional, because there may be some ways of traditionally forming a poem, like a sonnet or something like that. But there is nothing traditional about the thought in most poems. So if, for example, you just happen to be revising for your GCSEs and looking at the Power and Conflict or the Love and Relationships poems, then we have some really good examples. For example, we have the sonnet, very complex form, written by Shelley, called Ozymandias. Now, Ozymandias, what is it about? It's about a powerful man who wants to immortalize himself in the stone, but leave it long enough and nature will erase all memory of him. Kind of an interesting way of thinking about anybody who's particularly powerful, particularly interested in themselves, particularly egotistical, for example. Many poems now and in the last 150 years especially have been saying war is terrible. We know war is terrible. I don't think it can possibly be said enough, to be honest. So in the Power and Conflict cluster, for example, we have Wilfred Owen showing us soldiers who are killed by the elements, by the cold, rather than being shot. What a waste. We have Simon Armitage himself looking at what seems to be PTSD. We have Carol Ann Duffy thinking about a war photographer who's trying to straddle the two worlds, the peaceful rural England that he lives in and the war zones that he was traveling to. And this was based in the 80s, so a war photographer was more of a thing maybe then. Or if you're interested in relationships, or if you're having to read about relationships, you can read about how difficult and how painful romantic relationships can be. For example, as Hardy shows us in Neutral Tones, awful, painful, bitter feelings. Or in many of the relationships poems, we see the complexity of family relationships, and the experience of parents in particular, um, and children suddenly being able to see their parents' point of view. So these are just some examples, but they may be ones that people, especially now, are a little bit more familiar with. Some examples of how poets are trying to show us something that's a little bit different, something that might be a little bit away from mainstream. Um, Poets often want to talk about things that aren't talked about, or that are not talked about in the way that they want to approach them. What does this do for us? Why should we read them? It makes us think. It makes us put our minds in places that they wouldn't otherwise have been. It makes us question our own beliefs or our experience. Um, when I was at university, I had one lecturer in particular who used to say to us, read 2 poems every day, because you are never the same when you've finished reading a poem than you were before you started. Now, all of that sounds a bit like a protest movement, doesn't it? Something a bit radical, something um, very much away from the traditional way of doing things. I want us to see poetry like that. I worry that because as young people we are being examined on poetry, we are put off. And that often people look at a page or more than a page of verse and think, oh, that looks difficult. Some poems are difficult. Some poems need to be read more or several times. Some poems not difficult at all. And poetry is something we can have taste in, just the same as in music or visual art or anything else. So I really just wanted to make this brief point. Poets are awkward people who are saying the things that might not be said elsewhere, and in the ways that they might not be voiced elsewhere. And it's reading poetry is an opportunity for us to think in that way, to have our thinking challenged, and to grow intellectually. So please let me know if that resonates with you, and I hope to see you again soon.